38% of those who get baccalaureate degrees aren't making any more money than somebody with a high school education does. We've oversold baccalaureate degrees in this country. Administration wanted to transfer the debt from 13% of the people who had debt to the 87% of the people who didn't have debt.
So let's talk solutions.
We need to be lifelong learners, and technology is going to push that for us. So I want everybody to get the right kind of education, one that will make them happy, use their skills, and let them have a better life.
Dr. Foxx, good to be with you again.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your re-election.
Thank you.
It's obviously been a very, very eventful year for the country, for your state. How are you feeling as we head into 2025, given everything that you and the conference and the country have been through this year?
Feeling really very positive. I think getting this election behind us, having President Trump win a decisive victory in the popular vote, as well as in the Electoral College, is good for the country. I think the people feel they have been heard. The election went well. It's interesting to me that Schumer's asking for bipartisanship. You know, I have noticed in my time in Washington that you never hear the word bipartisan out of the Democrats when they're in the majority. But suddenly when they're in the minority, it's all about, let's be bipartisan. Yeah. But, you know, the people of this country are sensible people. They have a lot of common sense, and they saw the direction in which we were going, and they said, enough already, enough. We don't want to go in that direction. So I'm feeling very positive about where we are. We have a lot of work to do, not a lot of time to do it, and so we better get our act together.
So you mentioned that people feel heard. I think a lot of people were surprised, not only by the fact that Republicans won, but that they won in such a sweeping manner. One of the things I found notable is not only that President Trump won the swing states, but he made huge inroads in blue states, right? Even states that he may not have won, he gained 10, 12, 15 points. What do you think were the major drivers of those gains? What were the things that people felt like they needed to be heard about that delivered Republicans a victory?
I think they realized how out of touch the Democrats were. The things the Democrats were pushing, ignoring the border issues, raising inflation, causing people to have to really struggle to pay their bills. I'm telling you, when hamburgers $10 a pound, we have a problem in this country. And that was all brought on by the Biden-Harris administration. All of that brought on by them. You know, and we did well in the mid-year elections. That told us, that sent a message, I think. But the Democrats are out of touch. They're letting us, I think, a small segment of their party control these radical ideas that don't fit the mood of the people. And again, knowing that the president got more votes from groups that Republicans normally don't get votes from, sent a clear message. I hope that sent a clear message. I hope that in this session, we will get some Democrats to vote for us. Now we have 2 or 3 who have voted with us on some small number of issues, but I'm hoping others will see the handwriting on the wall.
Yeah. As far as what it took to make those gains, obviously AFP has been in the grassroots for a long time, and you've been great about doing events in your district and making sure that folks know the truth about these issues. It sometimes doesn't get reported, from the mainstream media. What did you see as the role of grassroots throughout this year, throughout this election cycle, and what do you see as that role going forward to make sure that the message is being delivered to the American people properly and they know what this new Republican majority will be doing in 2025?
Right. Well, I'm very pleased with what AFP has done over the years. You all have been there with the grassroots over the years, and that's what I talk about all the time. And you may remember hearing the president and others say, okay, go vote, you go vote early, but take 10 people with you. And that was the message that I put out all the time. I told people even before time for election is go out there, look in your neighborhood, find out people who talk to you about how things should be and that are not. Make sure they're registered to vote. So don't just wait till election day or early election, but stir up the grassroots. You know, I get mail from people all the time saying, what can I do? And I write them back and I say, you obviously understand the issues. Teach other people what the issues are. Have them see that they often vote against their principles. You know, my father was the first generation Italian American, and Italian Americans generally voted Democrat. But after Tom and I got married, he would rail on about what he saw on TV, and my husband would say to him, my father's name was Nunzio, and he'd say, Nunzio, you vote against your principles. And my father would say, no, I don't want to do that. And so one at a time is the way we do this. And so eventually my father changed because he understood that. And that's what every person who understands who really we are as a country, that they have to help take the scales off the eyes of other people.
Absolutely.
And that's how we have to, and that's what AFP works on, one at a time. And that's basically the way to do it.
Yeah, that's exactly. Every door knock, every phone call counts, and in close political races and legislative fights, and just making sure, I think, that we have an informed country that knows how their government works and what it's doing.
And when you have an election, like we had, not this time, but last time, where somebody won by 6 votes, you can really get people's attention.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's turn to the Education and Workforce Committee a little bit. A lot of the issues that you talked about that were really nationally salient issues are directly at play in the committee that you lead. So what did you see as kind of the chief disconnect between what the administration was doing on these issues and where the American people were at? I think student loans come to mind and some of these higher education policies. What do you think the Democrats missed about issues like this that got the American people so upset, given the issues in your committee?
Well, number one, the loan issue, I think, was a good issue for us. And we did talk about that. You know, the administration wanted to transfer the debt from 13% of the people who had debt to the 87% of the people who didn't have debt. And 60% of those people who had debt make over $300,000 a year. That's unfair. Now, the reason a lot of those people had the debt is because they went to a baccalaureate degree institution or even a master's degree institution. And we are changing in our culture from a degree-centered culture to going back to a skills-based economy. And so I think that message is getting out. Post-secondary education, I used to call it higher education. We shouldn't call it that anymore. Call it post-secondary. Has lost its sheen. People are understanding it's not worth it. I think the percentage is 38% of those who get baccalaureate degrees aren't making any more money than somebody with a high school education does. And so we've oversold baccalaureate degrees in this country. So what we have tried to do in the committee is explain to people that the American dream is possible without a baccalaureate degree. Now, do I want people to go on beyond high school and get skills and be able again to live a good middle-class life that way? Absolutely. Will some of them ultimately get a baccalaureate degree? Absolutely. And that is a good goal to have. We need to be lifelong learners, and technology is going to push that for us. So I want everybody to get the right kind of education, one that will make them happy, use their skills, and let them have a better life.
Before I get to my next question about the solution that you've worked on, really quickly, you've also done something so important rhetorically with the committee, which is work on sort of the social stigma against people who choose not to get a college degree. You are very critical of the use of the word training. Why
That's
is
right.
that? Tell us why that is. That's something that I remember as staff on the committee, you made sure that we never used the word, and something you've tried even among other members of Congress that you work with to change. Talk about that and the stigma around non-college
Sure.
certification.
Actually, I've explained that to presidents and vice presidents and governors. Um, well, I knew growing up in poverty that a good education was significant for me to get out of poverty. I had a younger brother who said he didn't want to go to college. This was in 1969, but he didn't want people to be ashamed of him. What a, what a horrible thing we've done to people when we say that. I had to get my doctorate. I wanted to be in education and I needed a doctorate. Spent 7 years going to school 2 nights a week, driving 2.5 hours each way. And the only thing I remember from all of that is one night a student came in and used the T word. See, I don't even like to say it. And the professor pulled himself up to his full 5 feet 2 inches and he said, "Don't ever let me hear you use that word again in conjunction with human beings. You train dogs and you educate people." Now, that's the way we need to think. Every program that is helping people learn a skill is an education program. It's an education program. I want the best educated electricians, plumbers, technicians who work on my TV, who install an appliance, HVAC. Those people need to be well educated because they need to learn to think. And that's what we want. And what we've done in our culture is we've created a two-tiered system where we think if you have a baccalaureate degree, you're somehow better than the person without a baccalaureate degree. That is not true. Only about 30% of the people in this country have a baccalaureate degree. It's the 70% who are making the country work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we need to honor them in every single way when they're good. That's what we need to do, is honor them. We also need to be grateful for the people who get baccalaureates, who go on to be doctors, who go on to be good lawyers. So there's a place for all of us. And that's what I try to preach.
Absolutely. So let's talk solutions. I think this has been an issue that Republicans have been very critical of what the administration and Democrats have been doing, but for a long time struggled to kind of rally around a solution. You are well on your way to doing that with the College Cost Reduction Act. Tell us about that bill.
The College Cost Reduction Act will do a lot to solve many of our problems related to post-secondary education. It forces transparency and accountability on the part of the colleges and universities. It will force them to be very forthcoming in how much is it going to cost, how long is it going to take, what's the chance of my getting a job with this degree, what are my chances, what am I going to earn with this degree. And it says to parents, here's the information that you need, to parents and students. And then we hold them accountable. If they don't live up to their promises, then we force them to have skin in the game. If they put students into programs that cost too much, force them to borrow too much money, and then the students get into jobs where they can't pay back the loans, then the schools will have to help pay back that. And again, the key is information for the parents and students, and let them make choices. Now, if they choose to go into professions where they borrow a lot of money and not able to pay some of it back, they're making that decision. But we're hoping that colleges and universities are going to steer them in the right direction.
Absolutely. And notably, not only is AFP very supportive of this legislation, and we're hopeful the House will pass this, but even as we look to next year, were this bill to become law, it would save taxpayers billions of dollars, which is relevant when it comes to the tax cut conversation.
$185 billion by changing the way the Department of Education administers the loans. That $185 billion, you're right, that will take us a long way to our reconciliation goals and being able to keep those tax cuts that were in the Tax Cuts and Jobs bill, which brought us such a great economy under President Trump.
Absolutely. I think it does both things that should be priorities for reconciliation. One is building on those tax cuts, and the other is passing good policy reform along the way that can fit in there. And that's why AFP is proud to support that bill. Let's turn to the other half of the committee just for a second, which are workforce issues. There's now been years of backlash from working class Americans against the big labor union status quo. How should Republicans approach labor issues in 2025 at a high level to make sure that the American people know that their interests are the interests of workers rather than the entrenched union status quo?
Yeah, well, I say there's a difference between supporting workers, as you say, and union bosses. And what President Biden promised was to be the most pro-union president. What he is the most pro-union boss president, not the most pro-union worker. And so we have seen overreach by the NLRB and by other union organizations. And what we want to do is rebalance that. I'm in favor of workers. And there was a time when we needed unions, but they are at their low ebb right now. But the federal taxpayer is subsidizing the unions at the federal level. So where you see the growth in unions is at the governmental level, at the state level, local level, and federal government level. We do not need to be paying people who work 100% for the unions. And that's what's happening. And they've weaponized the federal government to promote the unions at all of these levels.
Absolutely. So at a little bit higher level now, you've been in Congress for many, many years. You've spoken very poignantly about what your district in Western North Carolina means to you and how they motivate your work on the committee and elsewhere in Congress to serve them. Tell us about the people you represent and what you hope your legacy is in their minds when they think about your leadership of the committee and how you've served them here in Congress.
When I was in the state Senate, at the end of my first term, I went to a good mountain woman in Allegheny County and I said, "Millie, tell me what people say about me behind my back." And she said in her mountain dialect, "Well, I'll tell you what they say about you. They say she listens, she responds." Well, that was the greatest thing I could hear. And so that's how I've tried to be. You know, there are a lot of members of Congress. I don't expect to be remembered for very long, and that's not what's important to me. What's important to me is that I listen and I respond. That's what representatives should do. That's our title. We are here to represent the people we have in our districts. So I hope that people will continue to say that about me. They do now. And I want them to say, she was a good representative of our district because I respond to what they tell me. You know, Akash, I have always answered my own mail. I spend every night answering mail, and I want to do that. I know there must have been bets when I first came that I wouldn't last, but I have lasted because I want to hear what the people are saying. I don't do polls. I go out on the street. I'm out every weekend talking to people and listening to them. So I knew how my district was going to vote in this last election because I am listening to the people and out there on the street. So I represent a wonderful area of the country. Frankly, we have more people there now than I wish we had. So it's been discovered during COVID. but it's a great place. We were hard hit by Hurricane Helene, very hard hit. But the people are resilient. They're coming back. It's going to take a while. Those are the kind of people that have made this country great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've been proud to support them and help them, and you've been a phenomenal representative. Yeah. Finally, the party and the movement as a whole seem to be at a crossroads, and I think you are so intrinsically in touch with the people that you represent and their values and what they want out of their government. As you look to the future of our country and making sure that it's serving people like the ones that you represent, but people like that all across this country, what are the guiding principles you think that the party and the conservative movement should fight for and that should motivate them? What should it mean to be a conservative as we look ahead to serve the working people like you represent, the ones who built this country and continue to be its backbone?
Our founders were conservatives. If you look at the way they wrote the Constitution, they wanted the House of Representatives to be close to the people. That's why we get elected every 2 years. They wrote out the responsibilities of the House and Senate, the executive, not much for the judicial, but they believe that the government that governs least governs best. And they said, this is what we've outlined for the federal government to do. And then they put an exclamation mark on it with the 10th Amendment. And they said, if we didn't tell you to do this, do something at the federal level, it belongs to the states and to the people. We need to get back to that theory. We need to cut the role of the federal government in our lives. I have said that from the time I was first elected. I said that when I ran for the state senate. I said, we have too much government. The left thinks that the people are not very smart and that they need people at the federal level, the bureaucrats, to take care of us. I think the American people have spoken on this election, and I think you're going to see that. We're going to have to produce more to say we want less at the federal level and more responsibility given back to the people. They can handle it. They're smart enough to handle it. They've shown that.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Foxx, the people of Western North Carolina are very lucky to have had you as their representative and continue to do so. We're lucky to have you as a partner at AFP, and the country is lucky to have you led this committee and continue to fight for our founding principles in Congress. And we very much appreciate your efforts and your time with us today.
Oh, thanks, Akash. We appreciate AFP and what you're doing. Keep it up.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.